Right, so we've looked at how to write exponential functions, but everything we've dealt with has been a number. What do you do when your questions are in percent? So in order to do this, we need to backtrack a little bit to our middle school and elementary grades and talk about how do I go from a fraction to a decimal to a percent, or how do I go from a percent to a decimal to a fraction, or anything in between. So this is just a quick review that we're going to need for this unit. All right, so if I wanted to go from a fraction to a decimal, it's actually, the answer is within the problem. So if you look at this right here, what does the fraction bar mean? It means divide. When you go into a calculator, you're going to see this, right? That's a fraction. And you have a number there and you have a number there because you have the 1 there and you have the 4 there. When you see the fraction, once again, it means divide. So in order to go from a fraction to a decimal, all you need to do is divide. You just divide the numbers in that order. So what does that look like? So we do 1. And again, you see divide has a number on the top, a number on the bottom. That's how you remember that. 1 divided by 4 is 0.25. So this decimal is 0.25. Once I have the decimal, how do I go from a decimal to percent? And again, this has been covered previously, but I'm just recapping it real quick. We multiply by what? 100. When you multiply by 100, a faster way of doing this, of course, we can do this in the calculator. We come right here and you say multiply by 100 and boom, is 25. A faster way to do it is if you just look at 100, how many zeros does it have? 2. So what that means is you move the decimal 2 spaces to the right is multiplying. Moving it to the left is dividing. So if I move that decimal 2 spaces to the right, you see it will end up being right after the 25, which is 25.0. So this is 25%. So that's how you go from a fraction to a percent. All right, now let's go backwards. So we're going to start at a percent and go all the way to a fraction. So I'm going to do it on this side. You're going to leave this blank because I actually need it for a different question. So opposite of the way we went. So if we went from a decimal to percent by multiplying by 100, how do we go backwards? Well, what's the opposite of multiplying? Dividing. So if I have a decimal already, if I want to get back to, if I have a percent and I want to get back to a decimal, instead of multiplying, I go opposite, which is divide. So divide by 100. All right, now that I've divided by 100, I should be back to where I go. So let's check. So I'm going to start with the one we've just done. So that's 25%. And if I divide that by 100, do I get 0.25? I do. And now that we have decimals, I'm not going to worry about showing you the math behind how to get a fraction how to get a decimal into a fraction, because you have decimals. So you're just going to click that. So that's going to be click decimals. So from here to here, hit, shall I do this in decimals? So hit fraction in decimals and it's going to take you back. Now, the reason I'm telling you hit fraction in decimal, it's going to take you back. It'll always simplify it for you, because if we do it by hand, we have to also simplify. So that's going to be a longer process. Just hit fraction in decimals and it will take you back. All right, so now we're going to do everything in between. So actually, let me answer this question. So we started off with a 75%. Okay, so if a 75%, I want to write it as a decimal, what do? I divide it by 100. So it's hit fraction to get the decimal back because I had it transferred. So that's 0.75. And remember, we talked about you don't have to use the calculator. You can just do it. Here, there's a point after 75 because 75.0. Move it 2 decimals to the left because now we're dividing, not multiply. And you see where it goes? Right there. But you can use a calculator, no big deal. Once you're there, hit the fraction button. So this is 3/4. So 3/4 gives 75%. Okay. Now I want you to go ahead and fill, well, I'll do one more. Let's say I'm giving this one in the middle. I'm giving a decimal. Well, how do I make it a percent? So if I want to go from decimal to percent, what do? Multiply by 100. So again, multiply by 100, 12.5. Again, use the calculator if you need it. So this one is 12.5%. All right. I want to fill this one up. How do I go from here to here? It says, oh, so this one went backwards. You're supposed to hit fraction in decimals. Okay, so we need to put the decimal in 0.125 and then hit fraction and it'll give it to us 1/8. So this is 1/8. All right, so just go ahead real quick, as quickly as you can. Go ahead and fill this table. I do want you to do one more. I'm just going to add the question right here. I also want you to do 60% in here. All right, so go ahead and pause the video, fill that out real quick. All right, now that you've done that, we're going to come up with a shortcut equation or shortcut formula for growth and for decay when you have a percent. So let me just remind you once again. All right, our equation is y equals, oh no, Miss Ainley, I forgot. That's okay, go to the formula sheet. What do you see? Exponential equation y equals what? ABX. So A parentheses BX. What does A again mean? It is your y-intercept, your start, when there's nothing here. Okay, so sometimes if it's here, you have to do A plus that number. All right, what does your X mean? That's my time. What does my B mean? This is my growth, and how do I know if it's growth? If it's greater than 1. Or my decay. How do I know if it's decay? If B is between 0 and 1. All right, so a quick recap. All right, so now we're going to take this formula and we're going to rewrite a shortcut formula for when we have percent. So far we've had B be a number, like, 2, 3, 1/4. So it's been a fraction and a decimal, but it's never been a percent. So we're going to work on how do I do it when it is a percent. All right, so I'm going to do this second one. I think it's the more challenging one. And then you guys are going to come up with a shortcut formula for right here. Okay, so let me go to the second one. A digital camera is worth 500. It loses 60% of its value every year. Okay, so this is going to be, what do I start with at time 0? What do I start with? $500. And then I'm going to lose 60% of its value. Now, this is important. This is not B. Very, very important, because it is in a percent. It is not the B that we're used to. We have to somehow write it into B. All right, so to do that, we're going to kind of try and figure it out. All right, if I lose 60%, okay, first question we're going to start off is, what is 60% of 500? How would you go about finding 60% of 500? If you don't know, that's okay. That's why I'm here. All right, so remember, I'm not used to seeing things in a percent, so I'm going to make my percent into a decimal. And how do I make my percent into a decimal? I divide by 100. So I'm going to take my percent in the calculator and divide by 100, or you can do it without a calculator by moving the decimal places twice. So this is going to be 0.6. So I'm going to write the 0.6 right here. So 60% is like saying 0.6. Now I need to know what is 60% of 500. So I need to multiply that by the 500, right, to find what that percent is. I mean, what that change or what that value is. So I have 500 times 60% or 0.6. All right, so my value is 300. Does that number make sense? So just think about it for a second. I have a camera, it's 500. It loses more than half its value, right? Loses more than half of its value. Half is 250. It loses more than 250, which is right. It loses $300. So this is how I find 60% of something, is just multiplying that something by the decimal form of the percent. So I'm losing 300. Now, so I'm asking this, after my first year, when I lose the 60%, right? Do I write 300 here? Do I write what I've lost here? No, because the question is asking me, what is the value in dollars of this camera after I lose $300? So if I've lost $300, what is 500 minus 300? I'm now going to be at 200. So now the value of the camera at year 1 is 200. Now it's going to lose 60% again. So let's repeat the process. What do? You take whatever it is, whatever you're trying to find, 200, right, times 0.6. And that's going to give me, and you put that right up in the calculator, 120. So I'm going to lose 120. Is the 120 what I put right here? Absolutely not, because that's what I'm losing. So I take my value of 200. I'm going to lose 120. So 200 minus the 120. Now I have 80. So at year 2, the value is worth $80. All right. So now what is 60% of $80? 48. So 80 times 60% or 0.6 is $48. So again, is 48 what I put right here? No, because this is the amount I'm losing. So I'm losing, I was starting with 80 and now I am losing 60% of that, which is $48. So now I have $32. So at year 3, I have $32. Now, remember I said that 60% is not my B, because this is my 60% value. Okay, what is my B? So let's look at that. All right, so how do I find my B? To find my B, I always do my second Y value. Doesn't matter which one you pick. Divide by the one before, right? So doesn't matter which one. So I'll pick like, just to show you, because I always pick these two, I'm gonna pick this one. I'm pick 32. If I pick 32 as my second Y value, which one do I have to pick next? The one right before it. So I have to pick the 80. So 32 divided by 80 gives me my B. Divided by 80. All right, which is what? 0.4. So my B, every single time, has to be, if I did this correctly, 0.4. So let's check it. For this to be exponential function, it has to be 0.4. So I'm going to go with 0.4, all right, times, I started off with 500, oops, times, all right, started with 500, 0.4. All right, did it give me 200? Yes. If I multiply that again by 0.4, I should get the next one. What's with my multiplication? All right, do I get 80? I do. And finally, if I multiply by 0.4 again, 0.4, I should get 32. Perfect. So we did the math correctly. Now, here's my question. So B is 32 divided by 80, which gives me my 0.4. All right, looking at, well, let me finish writing my equation, then I'm going to ask you. So that's my B. What else do I need to write my equation? Well, remember, we have y equals abx, right? Y equals abx. So I got my B. I also need my a, which is my what? My y-intercept or my start. So what is my start according to the table? My start is always when x equals 0. So my a is when x equals 0, and that's going to be 500. Now I'm ready to write my equation. All right, so write my equation for me. Y equals, what's my start? 500. What's my b? 0.4 to the time unknown x. So that's my equation, but we're not going to do all this work every single time we need to find it when it's a percent. So we're going to come up with a shortcut formula, okay? How can I tell from B if the function is growth or decay? So I'm going to zoom in real quick. How can I tell from B if my function is growth and decay? Pause the video and go ahead and try. All right, so I'm going to say it's decay. And why would I think it's decay? Because B is between 0 and 1. Okay, now for my formula, everything stays the same, but how does B change? So what we're saying is everything stays the same in the formula. So it's still going to be y equals A, and then there's going to be a change right here and x. So how does B change? So let's take a look at it. So we started off with this percent. We ended up with 0.6. Then somehow we ended up with 0.4. So let's talk about that for a second. How did I go from 60% to 0.6? I divided by 100, right? What did I divide by 100? The percent. So I'm going to go ahead and write it right here. I took my percent and I divided it by 100. Okay, so I took my percent and I divided it by 100. So I went from here to here. And then what did I do here? How did I go from 0.6 to 0.4? Think about it for a second. How do I go from 0.6 to 0.4? If I did 1, let me check it with a calculator because I'm just trying it out. If I did 1 minus 0.6, I would get 0.4. So it looks like if I just did 1 minus, I would also get 0.4. So this is my shortcut formula. Now I'm going to check out my shortcut formula to make sure that this works. So I'm going to just do it on the side right here. I'm starting off with my question, right? And I don't have any of this work done, just this question. Digital cameras worth 500, loses 60% of its value each year. Find the formula. I'm going to do it right here. So y equals my a value, which is what? 500. All right. Then I go 1 minus, what's the percent? 60 over 100 to the power of x. And we're going to put that into our calculator. And we're going to see if we end up with the same thing. So we have 500, and then we got 1 minus 60 divided by 100 to the power of x. And we're asking, is this the same? Oops, shift. Is this the same as having 500 0.4 raised to the x? Yes, and you can see that what happens to the graphs. They're exactly the same. And if you don't believe me on that, we're going to take the inside, because that's all the change, put it right here, And you see it's 0.4. So this is the shortcut formula for just decay. Find V when t is 10. Okay, so they're giving us values. So they're saying t, which is our time, is 10. What does the value of V mean? Okay, cool. So V is equal to my 500, my initial, times my rate of decay because it's less than 1. And now the time is equal to 10. And put that right into the calculator and see what the calculator gives you. So 500, 0.4, and I can put 10 right here, or I can make it a table and type 10, whichever way is easiest for you. So this is going to be 0.0524288. Okay, what does it mean in the context of this problem? So let's remember what this was talking about. So we're starting off with the camera. It starts at 500. It loses value as time goes by. So what does this mean? The value of the camera after how much time? 10 years, right? The value of the camera after 10 years is, what's the value? Now, this is a good question. Okay, so let's look at our value. All right, this is in money. How many numbers after a decimal do you ever see in money? 2, right? So this is my cutoff point. This number 2, remember 5 and above, add 1 more, 4 and below, let it rest. Okay, so the number 2 is not going to change this 5, so it's going to stay as 5. So the value after 10 years is $0.05. In other words, it's worth 5 cents after 10 years. So you have to think of it in your context of your problem. All right, so again, you are doing this top part to find my shortcut formula. Please change that to an X. Okay, so it's just the B that's changing. How is it changing? Let's practice.